As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Hey, everybody.
Hey. What's up?
Ted Lowe, your host, and I'm joined today with co-host Bobby Lewis and also Jason. Thank you for being here, dude.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah. So you've spent lots of prep on this one, right?
Lots of prep.
Lots of prep. Yeah. We were just talking about how the homework that you've done for this episode, and we love that.
You know, I dig in. I really try to do everything I can to be prepared.
He didn't sleep last night. He just stayed up studying.
So Jason, I was researching, Googling my own life, which turns out there's nothing out there. But
it's a sad day when you Google yourself. And, oh, I don't exist.
I've done nothing.
I've done nothing. That's just not true. But anyway, today and every episode, we just ask one question, right? We ask one question, help dads explore how to be better dads. And at the end, we give a pro move.
Yeah.
And it's just one simple thing that's powerful in the end. And Bobby, what is the question of this episode?
Question of the week is, how do I not mess up my kids?
That's great. You guys got anything?
See, well, we're not going deep end yet here. Like, how about a shallow end? Dip your toe in the pool. Anything that you've done that was kind of a silly mistake with your kids, something that you can get over quickly, but still was a mess up?
Well, Jason, as you're thinking,
my research is failing me.
But one of the ones is when my son, when he was about 8 or 9 years old, told me, oh no, younger, 6, tells me that he wants a buzz cut. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's a great idea.
Nice.
And that's going to save me money on haircuts. And so I had clippers. And so I bring him upstairs, and within 5 minutes of him asking me, can I have a buzz cut? I start in the dead center of his head, and I go back, and I put a big guard on there to my defense. I started in the middle of his head, and I just went back, and I didn't know that 5-6-year-old hair is like baby hair, because it took it right down to the nub. And then he looked in the mirror, and his little lip starts quivering. And I'm like, I'm a dead man.
Wait, no crying now. You asked for this.
How'd your wife feel about that?
Well, here's the catch. I thought, and I kept saying, you look so handsome, buddy. And you could just tell he was on the edge. And so I met her in the garage. And I was like, listen.
Before you go inside.
Listen, you're going to be so angry with me, and you should be. I'm angry with myself. And I told her what happened. I said, he's on edge, so you need to tell him that he looks like his cousin and that he looks handsome. If you'll tell him those things, it would be good. And then you can beat me up. And so she walks in, and she's like, oh, hey.
the nervous laughter didn't give it away.
You look so handsome. And then I get to look like, come with me. And here was the kicker of this whole thing is in 3 weeks was her sister's wedding.
Oh,
so
man.
All the pictures, he just, So that's just a fun example, but it was not a big deal to me. It was a big deal to all of us,
I can see why that kind of stuck with you as the pictures keep rolling every year. You see those new ones.
Yeah,
I
exactly
made the mistake of, movie night is so hard at our house because we've got 12-year-old, 8-year-old, 4-year-old. And the movies that the 4-year-old wants to watch, we can't watch Frozen again. We just can't. All right. I've seen it a million times. Olaf in my dreams. I can't watch it anymore. And then the stuff the 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old wants to watch, like it's not appropriate sometimes for the 4-year-old. And then the 8-year-old, he's just kind of stuck in limbo. You know. So one night, my older daughter, she really wanted to watch Pirates of the Caribbean. And I was like, oh fun. Yeah. I love Pirates of the Caribbean. Great. Totally forgetting that there's like pirates that are like zombie skeletons slashing each other in the movie. And my 4-year-old's like, and I was like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have turned that on for you. And she had nightmares. I'm like, oh crap, I missed out. I mean, and in my defense, it's a Disney movie, right? So I mean, it should have been fine.
Well, that actually brings, that brings something to mind for me. For the past probably 15, 20 years, I've watched Home Alone on TV. And they edit it for TV. Yeah. And so
language and stuff like that.
About 3 or 4 years ago, I said, oh, Home Alone. My kids haven't seen Home Alone yet. We got to watch Home Alone. Boy, when the wife walked in at the inappropriate time, I was like, just break the TV. Just break it.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I do that now.
That's funny. Oh, that's...
My mom tells a story about how the first movie she ever saw in the theater was Grease. I think she was like 13, 14 years old. And she'll look at it now and she's like, why did my mom let me go watch Grease in the theaters, and just mortified that her mom would let her do that. And same idea, you know?
Yeah. You just forget, like you've watched it and it's become such a part of your Christmas tradition that you kind of blank out all the stuff that, 7-year-olds shouldn't hear.
You're like, whoa, it's totally different lens at that point. Yeah.
Oh man. Oh gosh. Ted, your kid's a little bit older. How do they react when you mess up? They're like quick to forgive, or they say, well, whatever, just move on. How do they handle that?
Again, we talk about this every episode, but just apologize. We apologize a whole lot. Like we talk about that a lot. I've had to be careful not to give them too much of an explanation or my reasoning. It's just to say, hey man, I messed that up. I'm so sorry. Full stop.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but you can tell it's a little bit a different level now as they're getting older, because my oldest one just turned 24. Our youngest one is 14. But it's kind of cool getting this relationship with them now to go, I don't have to teach them anything else. In fact, they're kind of at the stage of like, they don't want any teaching. They just want to hang. And so I don't have to correct my parenting because I'm trying not to do any.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so we just go to Top Golf. That's our relationship.
Let me make it up to you.
That sounds awesome. Yeah. Well, we talk about some of these joking things like the buzz cut. And the end of the day, not that big of a deal. Watching the movie. Okay, we won't watch that again. That sort of stuff. We can get through that. But there's some deeper things that we do as dads, and sometimes we don't even know we're doing them, that are actually messing up our kids. And more than anything else, I think they're just kind of blind spots that we have. And there's a really popular All Pro Dad article that was written. I think, did BJ write this one? BJ Foster? Yeah, BJ Foster, who's been on this podcast before, great writer. He wrote a really interesting article, the kinds of dads who are damaging their kids. Damaging sounds like a pretty strong word, but it's just another way to say messing up. And sometimes we make mistakes. And I think if we go through this list together, it'll help us to kind of set up some guardrails so we don't do this as often as we end up doing them,
Right. So dad, as you're hearing this isn't about, I'm a terrible dad.
Sure.
I'm 5 of the 8. This is just like, in this little area, maybe I've got a tendency.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I am 5 of the 8. I read this and I was like, man, at some point in time in my life, or in the last 24 hours, I've been at least a couple of these.
Yeah. The thing about this particular list, we're going to go through all of them here. And if you miss any of them, we're going to have the show notes. We're going to have the article down. You can go click on it, read it, share it with your friends. I think the important thing to remember with this is they're not necessarily one-offs. This is more of a dad attitude that could be troubling for your kid if you fall into some of these categories. Let's go through some of them real quick. Number 1, you're the absent dad. That can definitely mess up your kids if you're the absent dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you mean by that, Ted?
I think it's like I'm not available either physically or emotionally or both. Yeah. You have to, some people travel for work. And so you got to figure that out. How can I not be like an absent dad? And so I think it's when it's going, hey, maybe somebody's listening right now and they're working way too much and they keep telling, kids, hey, soon, and soon never seems to come. So I think it's when we put them off or we think we're going to get there, or when they're talking to us and we're absent.
Yeah. And it's easy to be there, right? I mean, we're all busy, or we all at least think we're busy to a certain degree. And we get tired. And at the end of the day, it's like, man, I don't, it's like, do I have time for myself to think, myself to rest? And then you come in the door, and at least for me, my kids are, 8 and 12, and they're like, Dad's home. And it's just like, man, I've been going hard in the paint all day with work, and all they want to do is, especially my son right now, he's 8, and all he wants to do is hang out with me. And so it's like, you just have to, or I have to tell myself, all right, bedtime is in 3.5, 4 hours, right? So if I can engage, and he doesn't need a lot of times we'll start to play and then he'll go off on his own adventure, right? But and he'll want me to, but if I miss that moment of excitement with him, that's what I feel like. I feel like, man, I was absent today.
Right. Yeah. Talk about the balance of that, Jason, because I know I used to feel so guilty with my kids when they were boys, when we'd go outside and play football. And I came in one day and I told my wife, I said, there's never going to be a time when they go, okay, Dad, I'm tired. Can we go inside? Yeah. Like, how do you balance that in your mind?
It's hard, honestly. And I don't know that I have it all figured out, but I think it's trying to pay attention to your kids. For me, it's trying to pay attention to how much they're desiring my attention at that moment.
That's good.
So there's going to be times where, they really want my attention. And then there's times where they're just kind of hanging out and doing their own thing.
It's good.
And so for me, I have to be aware of like that. When my son comes up and asks me, Dad, will you play with me? That he is wanting my time right then.
Well, that's good.
But if he's just playing in the house and he's doing his thing, I can kind of take a minute to either engage with my wife or just take a second for myself.
Right.
And I think too, and a lot of times that is right when I get home. And it's like, that's the hardest time because I'm like, I just drove across town in bumper to bumper traffic. And I'm just like, my wife even asked me, she's like, "What did you get that alone time in the car?" Yeah, that alone time where I'm trying not to die.
Trying not to die when I'm on high alert.
Yeah, it's just, so that doesn't help, but like just recognizing that he really wants my time.
That's
I
great.
I do want to make a small point here because you guys both answered the question as dads who live in the home with your kids.
Yeah.
There are plenty of dads who are going to be listening who maybe they're divorced. They don't live with their kids all the time. Maybe there's, for whatever reason, they're just not seeing their kids as often as they want to. It's a huge void in your child's life. You're occupying a space that no one else can occupy in their life.
Yeah.
You've got to make the time. If you feel yourself slipping into this absent dad role, fight to get out of it.
Yeah.
Because you can't replace dad time. You just can't. Mom can't replace dad time. She's not dad. She's mom. So we've got to figure out a way. If you're a dad who's listening, who is maybe feeling like, oh, this is me. This sounds like me. Fight. Even if you're not in the same home with your kid all the time, to be more present in their life.
And I can speak from a kid that actually experienced that. My parents separated before I even knew what family was. So I was bouncing back and forth between my dad's house every other weekend and my mom's house. I lived with my mom, and every other weekend I went and saw my dad, which as a kid, it's kind of like, even though he's your dad, I don't live with him for like two weeks until I get to see him again. And so it was almost at some points like going to a stranger's house for me. It was very strange until I learned that he was my dad, and that was it. And about the time I was 8 years old, I just had this craving. Like I didn't even know him that.
How old were you when you got a divorce?
I was I think it was before I was 2 or 1. I never knew them together.
But all of a sudden you're seeing 8 years old.
Right.
Boom,
And all of a sudden I get this, I think it was in 3rd grade. I just started school at my school where my mom lived. And I was like, I just want to go live with my dad. And there were some things still going on in my dad's life that probably shouldn't have been going on, like with kids around. And all I wanted to do was go and be with him. So to your point, like you may think, you may be thinking like, I'm not a good influence. I guarantee you all your kid's thinking about is spending time with you. So that is a ploy from a kid that grew up that way, that says, hey, they want you and they need you in their lives, regardless of what you think you can't provide for them.
Because and I'm thinking about dads that are feeling this right now and go, I'm every other weekend. How can they stay connected and not be absent despite the physical absence? Is there something they can do?
Yes. Specifically, be proactive and in seeking engagement. Ask questions about what's going on in their life. Know what's and then choose to want to talk to them, not just like get information third party or secondhand from someone else. Talk to your kid, ask them what's going on, ask them questions. So it's all about being proactive. And if you don't know what to ask, just ask them what they're into right now. What are they enjoying doing right now? Ask them if they're participating in any activity, sports, music, band, whatever it is. That is the thing, is that you be intentional in pursuing the relationship. Don't wait for somebody to bring the relationship to you.
Which is the beautiful thing right now of cell phones. Even I don't know, we're always pushing back on technology, but is that a win, do you think, for dads?
I think so. I mean, and again, me and my dad have had our struggles throughout, and our relationship is getting better over the years. But even recently, I'm a text message guy. Like I text, but he's a phone conversation guy. Yeah. And if I text him something, he doesn't value that. Whereas I'm like, no, I'm staying in touch with you. What do you mean? Yeah. That's not, he's like, no, I want you to pick up the phone and call me. And so I did not know that we were disconnected on that until recently, until the last couple of years. And like, now I know if I want to be proactive in our relationship as of right now, I need to pick up the phone and call him. Whereas he needs to be proactive in responding to my text messages and receiving the information and not being like, no, I'm not, I don't receive that because you texted it to me. So, I mean, if you have young kids, that's obviously, there's a battle between, should they have a phone? Should they not have a phone? But again, I think it's all about intentionality. It's all about you seeking out a relationship with your kid versus waiting on somebody to provide things for you.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks for sharing that, man. No, I really think that's helpful for a lot of dads. And there's a lot to say about each one of these. Absent dad is one that we really don't want to be. But another one, second one on the list here, I don't think we need to spend as much time on this one. It's abusive dad. I think that kind of speaks for itself, whether it's physical. Obviously, we don't hit children, we don't hit women. And physically, verbally abusive, it's never okay. Mentally, psychologically, any of those things, emotionally. If you're falling into an abusive pattern, we need to get help for that because that's not okay.
Get help immediately. Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things. I know people use that phrase, but this is one of those. Pause today and figure this out.
Yeah. And
pause this podcast, call someone, figure it out. Yeah.
Right.
And if your dad said things to you that you didn't like and it hurt you in your heart and you find yourself saying those things to your kids, it's not okay. It's
it's understandable, but it's not okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Third one on the list is demanding dad. And when I think of this, what comes to mind is hard to please dad. I think we all kind of can fall into that category. I know sometimes I put pressure on my kids. I'm demanding, hey, you got to do well in school. I want you to do well in these other things that you're doing. Those demands can add up, and that can kind of mess up our kids because maybe they have, expectations heaped on them that they're not ready for.
And kids are different too. The level of demand that you can quote put on them, like my daughter, for instance, she puts a lot of demand on herself. She pushes herself very hard, and so I know for her, I need to encourage and tell her not to be so hard on herself. Whereas at times my son can be a little bit not proactive. He's kind of like, I do what I want, and so for him, I can push him a little bit more, but he's such a soft, he's soft-hearted kid, very, very much like me, that I have to temper my language.
Ooh, that's as important. We try to always do this, but just acknowledging that every kid's different.
Yeah.
Like I need to be a little bit more demanding with my boy, with my daughter. That's good.
And there's a middle ground there too, because I don't ever want my kids to think that my love is tied to their performance.
Right.
And so if I'm demanding good grades, like I really want you to do well, it's out of love. Like I want you to excel in your academics. I want you to do well because it's going to be good for you. But I don't want them to ever feel like I'm putting so many demands on them that like they're not earning my love if they're not achieving the level of expectations that I've heaped on them. That's a middle ground I got to be careful with.
Yeah, I think that's so important that your kids know that you love, care, and are proud of them just for who they are. And a lot of times we have these things in our head that we kind of hope we hope for our kids. We have these hopes and dreams for our kids. And then we put that extra pressure on based on our hopes and dreams for them, which might not even align with how they're wired or designed.
Right. And you think, we really can't make a child choose anything. Right. We can't demand our will onto them. Yeah. I mean, they can choose whatever they want to. And I feel like looking back, one of my regrets was my middle son, he's just really introverted. And I had this thing of like, you're going to be respectful and you're going to have great people skills. And every time we would go to a family gathering, you could just see him withdraw, and he did not want to go inside the house. I'd be, you're going to walk in, you're going to
be respectful, look people in the eye. Yeah.
And finally, somebody said, it's dear friends of ours who've talked about before, and they said, why does he have to do that? And I was like, well, isn't that manners? And she said, you just tell him, this is the mom says, you tell him, hey, buddy, it's okay to be shy, but it's not okay to be nasty. And let him have a few minutes before he comes in. Yeah. And so it's one of those things, I'm going to give you a few minutes, but I think that brings angst in dad. Yeah. You can't get them to do anything. They really can't choose whatever they want.
Yeah. Yep. So demanding dad is one that we want to try to avoid. Another one we want to kind of guard ourselves against is Disneyland dad, or for all our Florida listeners, Disney World dad, because this is a bad thing. And we define that as more friend than parent. And I think we kind of all want to have fun with our kids and play with them, but we got to remember our primary role is to parent them. And our secondary role is to be their friend. Like maybe that switches a little bit when they get older, Ted. But you know, for us with kids who are 12 and under, I got to be a parent. I can't be a friend first.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I tell my son. It stinks when we're playing and we're having a good time, and then all of a sudden he does something that's just like, whoa, buddy, where did that come from? And then I have to turn off Fun Dad and try not to give a lecture, which is my default. I just want him to understand so bad. And I'm like, and then about halfway through my lecture, I'm like, he's 8. He has
not been listening for 30 seconds.
Yeah, he's been checked out for the last 2 minutes.
He's 8. That says it all.
How about this next one? This one hits me. I've been circling ones that kind of apply to me, and I think this is number one. Distracted dad. Dude, we're so distracted all the time. And it's because so much is vying for our attention all the time. I think all of us are more distracted than we'd like to admit. And this is so detrimental to our kids.
So true.
Yeah, I mean, from work to, I mean, your phone, like constantly. I mean, we have 3 or 4 different communication platforms that we communicate with just through work. Yeah. And then we also have text message and phone calls. And
have you been getting my smoke signals?
Yeah, carrier pigeons. However.
No, I think this is tough though, because in my opinion, I don't know if you guys have experienced this at home. I've been sitting there, got out the phone, I'm looking at stuff or whatnot, and I look up and they're looking at me. I'm like, oh. Right. Let me slide this off to the side, because what I think it conveys to them is this thing is more important than me right now. And that's tough, because I don't want my kids to ever think that there is some other tangible object that I desire to spend more time with than them. Yeah. And if I'm distracted by all these other things and not giving my total focus to them, what's it going to tell them?
Right.
I saw a dad in the airport the other day, and he's got his wife's cell phone. She's gone to the restroom, and the child's on FaceTime. And he's scrolling on his phone.
Oh, man.
And I mean, no judgment. We don't know what the guy's been through in the day. But it is one of those moments of just going, and the picture is, you could definitely see where his focus was. But I think this is one of those that we can get very tangible and very practical on. One of the rules that we've had for many years is no phones during dinner. And here's the other one's been huge. No phones in the car. Because kids will talk to you when they're shoulder to shoulder a lot of times. And that is golden time. And you say, and my kids even said, Dad, you can pick it up. Like they started getting frustrated. Yeah. I go, it's your mother. I'm not picking it up. No, but I think if you say in the car, I mean, those are windows of time that usually pretty quick. So, your company's not going to fall apart. You're not going to lose your job. Everybody else is going to be okay. People used to live without phones.
Yeah.
It was a miracle.
I don't remember.
Just maybe somebody, this is what they do, right? Like this is, I'm going to stop being on the phone during dinner.
I do want to read this one quote, because this is from BJ's article. I think it's really good. Charles Hummel said, "Our greatest danger in life is permitting the urgent things to crowd out the important things."
We're both like, ouch.
Yeah. I know both of you just kind of sagged in your chair a little bit, but it's true, because nothing's more important than, our kids when they're around. Yeah. We want them to grow. We want them to be nurtured by all the things we had to teach them. We want them to be safe. We want them to learn how to love. And if we let the urgent things, and scare quotes here, the urgent things crowd out the more important things, they'll remember that for sure. Yeah. Number 6 on the list is hypocritical dad. Do as I say, not as I do. That sort of thing. You ever said that?
Never said that, because that was said to me and I hated it. I'm like, what a terrible, like even when I was like
so
10
you
or
really
11.
got that. You got the line.
Yeah. I had that before, and I'm like, what a like even as a kid, I knew that was a terrible example. Like, what are you talking about? No way. Yeah. You can't say that. You can't just do whatever you want and then tell me to not do that. Like, come on. There are certain things that adults can do that kids can't do, but most of the time it's like, behaving and acting a specific way. But no, that one's
you checking some off the list. Some of these dads qualify.
Well, for sure. I'm really typically 90% of the time I'm really good with diet and exercise, but something clicked in my brain at about 9 o'clock where I'd lose my mind. And so I'd see my 20-year-old the other day, and I said, he was talking about, he goes, I've just been really eating bad. I kind of eat like all day long, like how you eat after 9.
Shots fired.
And I'm like, hey, don't you see all the other hours? But that was fair. I'm going, oh, okay. So yeah, that's a tough one.
Isn't it funny things our kids notice about us that we're just kind of completely oblivious to?
I thought you guys were in the bed when I was in there eating cereal and chips and
oh gosh.
They just see the cereal box. This was full yesterday. This was a quarter of the box.
Where's the ice cream?
Wasn't this gallon of ice cream full yesterday?
Yeah, I know where it is.
2 more of these that we want to hit on. Number 7, macho dad. You love that term, Ted? Macho dad?
I just don't know. Do people still use that word? It's like the village people did.
They don't. They don't
people
use
not use it. They don't, do they? Macho man.
Take it up with BJ. He wrote the article.
Yeah, okay.
Macho man.
We love you, BJ. But
macho, what we mean by
cool.
macho is like someone who just kind of objectifies women. Hopefully, if you're married, you're not objectifying anyone. And even if you're not married, you shouldn't be looking at women, with any kind of, lust in your eyes or any sort of, negative thoughts. But I think that this is an incredibly powerful thing to model for our kids, not to be a macho dad. For one, our daughters will know how to be respected. And 2, our sons will know how to respect women.
Right.
So I think this is a very important one.
Yeah. And I think too, the macho, the masculine, like I remember my dad as early as 7 or 8 telling me to be a man. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like I'm
a child.
I am a child. I do not know what a man is.
I can't tie my shoes.
Yeah.
Be a man.
Yeah. I think it's a big one. I definitely have been more conscious of this as my oldest daughter has gotten older, because she's about to be a teenager. And just recently I started opening her car door, which I've done for my wife. Yeah. But now she's a little bit older, and it's like, okay, you might be like sneaking into dating years not too far from now. Yeah. And I want to have an example set for you of what to expect for politeness, to be cared for, to be seen as more than just some girl that's coming out with you, but to be seen as someone's daughter and a valuable person. And so I'm going to start modeling that now. And if the instinctual macho man thing is to not do that, or to not protect, or to not get rid of that.
Right.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah. People talk about chivalry being dead, but I'm like, it's only dead if you let it die, really. I mean, at the end of the day. And so people can take that for what it is. But I do the same thing for my daughter too.
Absolutely. Last thing, we've gone through a good list here. We got one more, and this one I think is maybe the most important one to me. I know I talked about distracted was big for me earlier, but this one's good. Passive dad. Passive dad, and that means someone who avoids conflicts, lets their kids get away with too much. And I think that does tie in a little bit to wanting to be liked and wanting to be the fun dad and wanting to just get along. But passive dad is not a dad that's setting your kids up for success.
I agree.
I agree.
Good.
Not to be too passive about it.
Glad to hear
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think anybody at this table understands being passive. We're too aggressive.
Well, that's it's one that I don't as much relate to, just because I feel like I honestly feel like we're too hard on our kids at times. I feel like we need to give them more of a break.
I think this connects with me a little bit because I'm kind of naturally apathetic to so many things. And that's not because I don't care about things in general, but I try not to make a big deal out of much. And so some things deserve to be made a big deal out of.
That's true.
You know, and I don't want to fall into the trap of being passive on something that actually really matters to my kids. And that might be my natural tendency. And I don't like that because what it's going to tell my children is what matters to them maybe doesn't matter very much to me. Yeah. And then it may not matter to them anymore.
Well, and the passiveness of not engaging too. Like, you know, I'm afraid that kind of going back to being the absent dad, this can kind of play into that too. It's like, you know, I don't want to address the conflict that maybe if I don't live with them, maybe if they don't know me well, make that excuse because I feel uncomfortable. So maybe I won't make a move. Yeah. But you're right. It's a big deal to be engaged and
These were great. These are great. And I think, you know, again, not to condemn or shame anybody, but I think we're going, this can sting a little bit, but it's important for us to have this kind of awareness. You know, I think the bottom line here is knowing the type of dad you don't want to be helps you to be the type of dad that you do want to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes we may be more than one of these in the same day. But if we recognize it, we catch it, we can redirect it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So what's our pro move of the day?
Pro move of the week is this. Just ask yourself. We read all 8. I'll read them again for you, actually. Absent dad, abusive dad, demanding, Disneyland, distracted, hypocritical, macho, and passive dad. Which one of those do you think maybe describes you the most? Which one sticks out to you the most? Do one small thing this week to kind of redirect yourself away from that tendency and kind of be a dad that's a little more engaged with your kids this week.
It's a good challenge.
That is. And what's the hope of this? Let's say they're doing this, they've got a million things to do, but they start focusing. What's the payoff?
Payoff to me is that our kids, we have a better relationship with them because all of these things can be divisive. If we're the absent dad, well, that puts a wedge between, my kids and me. If I'm the abusive dad, clearly it does. If I'm the Disneyland dad, then maybe they don't respect me as much. All of these things have a way of kind of putting a gap between my kids and I and relationally. And I want to close that gap as much as possible.
Yeah, be a balanced parent, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, you want to be balanced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Helps us love them better.
I think
awesome.
So.
And we hope this episode does exactly that for you and your kid this week. Help you to love them even better. Not that you're not doing a great job. We know that you are, but just to take that even to the next level. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.